Thanks for joining us for our next video in our 50 Reasons Why Jesus Came to Die series. We are up to reason 46, and that is that Christ suffered and died to gather all his sheep from around the world. All over the world, there are people whom God has chosen who will certainly be reached and saved by the Lord Jesus Christ. In John's Gospel, in chapter 11, verse 50, the high priest at that time, Caiaphas, he said of Jesus that it is better for you, better for the Jewish nation, that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish. Caiaphas, he meant that it would be better if Jesus died, then the Romans accused the Jewish nation of treason and therefore destroyed the whole nation. But behind what Caiaphas said, God had another meaning. And John explained that in the next couple of verses. He said that Caiaphas did not say this of his own accord, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that God would die for the nation, and not for that nation only, but also to gather into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. Jesus died for the Jewish nation, but he also died to gather into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. Jesus, he said the same thing, but in a slightly different way. He used a different picture in John chapter 10. In verse 16, he says, I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. That fold that he's talking about there is Israel. And he is saying that he has sheep beyond that fold. Sheep that are not of this Jewish fold. Sheep from every tribe and language and people and nation. Sheep that Jesus came to ransom through his death. And he died to gather them in, his sheep, from around the world into his fold. And as far as these other sheep go, Jesus is committed to bringing them in. He says, I must bring them also. I must bring them in. He's so committed actually to bringing them in that he died to gather them in. And that's what Caiaphas sort of inadvertently said. Jesus died to gather them in. Jesus would die not only for the Jewish nation, but also to gather into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. And Jesus, on the cross, he gave up his life to gather his sheep from all over the world. And because he died to gather them in, he will certainly gather them in. They will surely and definitely be saved, no doubt. So how then is he doing all of that? Well, he does that through his sheep that he's already brought in. He calls his people, his sheep, to go and make disciples, to go and bring in his other sheep that will form part of this fold, that will join in with this fold. And so when the church as a whole sets out to make disciples, to share the gospel with others, there are those who will listen to Jesus' voice and they will come into the fold. It's definitely going to happen. He speaks through his people, through us, and people will hear his voice and they will come in. Jesus said in John 6, verse 37, all that the Father has given to me will come to me, and whoever comes to me, I will never cast out. So God the Father has given Jesus a flock of sheep that he must bring in, and they will come to him. That will happen. And that will happen when Jesus calls them through his people, as his people proclaim the gospel. Those sheep, they will hear his voice and they will respond. They will come in to the fold. So let's join with him in this task of gathering all of his sheep from around the world by making the gospel known and making disciples. And let's do that with confidence that Jesus will gather into one the children of God scattered abroad. He will do that as we proclaim the gospel. So thanks for listening. Blessings to you, Rooted. See you soon.